Okay, guys, this is a little bit different. I've been wanting to do a different type of martial arts, and I've been doing a lot of kung fu. So it's time to bring another different type of martial arts in here because I think that I like to see different styles. Right? It's always been my dream to be able to pierce into different systems. How would you say your name? Because I've been trying to pronounce your name. How can you
Pasquale.
Pasqua? Okay, Pasqua. It's nice to meet you. Um, can you introduce to yourself who you are, please?
Sure. I am, well, about 37 years old. I've been doing martial arts for about 15 years. Uh, Started with traditional martial arts, jujitsu, aikido, Wing Chun, Tai Chi, things like that. And I ended up going into Systema about 8 years ago. And when I started doing Systema, I was able to quit everything else because I got everything I needed in Systema. Because it's a combat martial arts, so it's not specialized to just striking or wrestling or weapons work. They do everything. And they try to look at everything as kind of the same, right? They look for the common principles in everything. So, the foundations of Systema martial arts is built around the four pillars, which is breathing, relaxation, structure, movement. And, when you work on these things, uh, it becomes more of a tactical type of study than a technical study. When you're doing a technical martial art, you're repeating movements over and over again so that you can then use those movements later, right? When you're doing a tactical martial art, you're studying position, sensitivity, how you're relating to your environment. And you're trying to get yourself in a position where you can use whatever tools you have. So Systemic can actually work with other martial arts very, very well. But you don't have to memorize any particular techniques. We kind of let the principle govern what our body's going to do. So we end up in the right place all the time, that we can utilize things from there. So it becomes very spontaneous. I often think of it as kind of like the jazz of martial arts, if that makes any sense. Rather than
Really?
classical, I memorize something, then I regurgitate it, then I test it. This is more like, okay, here's a theme. What can we do within the theme? Does it make sense?
Hmm. Can you explain more in depth, please? Can
Sorry.
you explain more? Yeah. Can you explain more in depth, please?
Sure. It's actually, it's a lot easier to show somebody than it is to talk about it.
Yeah. They all say that. They
So,
all say, yeah. I know that it's. I mean, well, I would like to be able to see how it works, right? Like, if you can show, but I don't know. We're just doing an interview, right?
it's not as visible as other martial arts. Other martial arts, there's an aesthetic thing to it, right? You can see the movement, you can see how that person moves, and things like that. But Systema, like my Systema, would not look like your Systema. If that makes any sense. So you and I would not have the same movement because we don't have the same bodies. We don't have the same mind. We don't have the same life experiences. So your Systema would not look like mine.
Mm.
Uh, the tools that you'd utilize would not be the same as the tools that I utilize. So, for example, if we were to both do the same exercise, what we would do is, for instance, I would give you pressure to your body, right? You would learn how to absorb that pressure and allow it to move you into a position where you can make a decision. And then you would do the same thing to me. Now, what you might do with your body is going to be different because you have different tension in your body, right? You have different muscle memories. So you're going to move yourself in a different way than I will. You're a different size than me. So in this way, it's highly individualistic. It can be adapted to any individual, and that's why it's also not just a martial art. It's an extremely advanced and a sophisticated movement system. So it's not just for martial arts. It's for healing. It's for just being able to walk up and down the stairs, being able to get out of bed in the morning, um, dealing with pain and injury and limitations to your own body and your own mind. It's quite advanced. There's not you're not going to go in and like memorize a bunch of techniques and then, you know, walk out, oh, hey, I know what I'm doing. You know, I know this martial art. It's not one of those things. So, you know, and that's why like in Systema, you're going to run into a whole bunch of people who have already done martial arts, have black belts in other martial arts. And now they're looking for a way to go a little bit further. It's quite fascinating. Yeah.
Actually, when you talk about it, it's very fascinating to me, right? When you talk about that in that way, it looked like as if like I don't know if you know personal development.
Yes.
It's almost like I can sense it's like almost like Jeet Kune Do, but not really. But it's also like spiritual in nature. It's like it can you. It's like you can heal your body, or it's like I have a sense that it's just more than just a martial arts, right? And it's pretty fascinating actually when you talk about it. I was like, wow, that's blew my mind because you know Wing Chun doesn't have that or type of or any other type of martial arts. I never heard that one before. Like really, that's really great. How did you get all like study all the other martial arts? How did you get into those like
Um,
Wing Chun?
yeah,
How you?
it was funny you said that it's like, you know, I always felt that Systema is like the self-inquiry of martial arts. You know, you're just saying that to like asking yourself more personal questions. And the original name of Systema was actually Poznaj Sebia, which in Russian means know yourself. Know yourself. So that was the original name of this martial art, even though it came from people who were elite special forces. You know, those are the people who designed this martial art, you know, and started teaching it to civilians, you know, about 20, 30 years ago. So it's quite interesting that you said that, you know. Yeah, I got into traditional martial arts. I started with Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu. And I got into Aikido because I wasn't a particularly aggressive person. I'm not a particularly competitive person. So I didn't really want to go into something where I was just fighting all the time, or I didn't want to have that mentality. I wanted to learn self-defense from um, uh, a more softer side, right? Softer side of martial arts. I wanted to learn how to. I liked the idea in Aikido of blending with your attacker's energy in order um, to keep yourself in a safe position. So that's what attracted me to Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu as well. You know, I like the joint locks and working there. But the thing I found was everybody was extremely tense. And by the end of my Aikido career, which lasted almost 10 years, you know, I wasn't really going any further. I was like, you know, okay, I memorized all the techniques, and then, you know, I started teaching, and the other teachers just wanted me to keep teaching techniques. And I'm like, but I want more, you know, I wanted more. And then I discovered Systema. Somebody showed me how to take a strike in a Systema fashion, right? And he's like, no, 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 you can't tense up and be like this to take the strike, you know, because you're stopping the strike. The strike is going to break the tension. You're going to get hurt. They taught me to relax with it. And then I found that I could actually take that energy and give it back as well. And I'm like, wow, this is Aikido, but it's soft. It's relaxed. I have to relax my body. I have to relax my tension. And I found that it was like, wow, now I can improvise. I can just kind of move with whatever's happening and just come up with my own thing, which whatever works for me in this particular scenario. And it was very liberating. You know, I was taken out of this box. They give you this box in a lot of the martial arts, and you got to kind of learn everything in the box, right? And I just felt like somebody just said, okay, this was great. All this stuff in the box is really useful. You know, but let's open up the box. Let's just dump all the pieces out and just pick up whatever you need whenever you need it. You know, and it was really, really liberating for me to kind of have, you know, this teacher tell you that, you know, there's no rituals, there's no bowing, there's nothing like that. And, you know, I mean, the one camp we went to, like they took you out in the woods at like midnight, right? They walked you out like 2 miles into the woods, middle of the night. We're all fighting out in the middle in pitch black, right? And then they're like, okay, find your way home. No flashlights. You know, and it's it's interesting. We were using knives, we were using guns, and like, you know, we're using trees for self-defense. And you know, you had to improvise in the moment. You know, you couldn't just decide that, okay, I'm always going to be in this scenario. I see a punch. This is my number of techniques, because, you know, real life doesn't work that way. You know, self-defense doesn't work that way. So it was really, really liberating to have a teacher tell you to do that, when I've had teachers for years and years and years saying, okay, no, it has to be this way. You have to put your feet here. You have to put your hands here. And that's all you can do, you know, until you've been doing this for 20 years. And then you can start to play. So it was really a liberating sense for me. And, you know, I did Wing Chun too. I did Wing Chun for 3 years, and I loved Wing Chun. I loved the movements. I loved the flow. It was beautiful. And like, that stuff still comes up for me, but it has a whole different quality now. Whole different quality. It's not, I'm not like, I don't see something and say, okay, what's my best technique? My body's just there. It just goes to where it's supposed to go. And if not, you know, that's fine. I have something else, you know.
That is beautifully like when I listen to you, because I'm also like a martial artist at heart. It's just that I'm an off and on guy. It's just that I have so many things that I want to do. My mind is just like that, but I'm just right now. I'm just focused on, you know, personal development, just books in general. It's like, yeah, books have to do with because in general, my mission in life is to actually impact, you know, the special education, right? Because I was put label as a special ed kid, but I found out through books, reading. You know, most people hate books or whatever learning. I don't care, but because, you know, the school forces you. I know it had to do with martial arts too, so bear with me a little bit, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And my whole, you know, channel, it's about for you. I hear you when, you know, you were learning. The teacher was, you know, instructing you, and you didn't want to do it anymore because and you keep doing the same technique over and over. It's because you want it to more, right? But it's more of you want it to grow, not be stagnant, right? Of life, right? And I feel that within you. I can see it, right? So in life with the education, I don't know. Oh yeah, you're in America, right? The educational system is broken because they don't teach you about the brain. They don't teach about anything. So I have to read books to understand the brain cells and stuff, whatever like that. So that's what I'm promoting. But also to when I do interviews, is to be able to connect the dots with martial arts artists and all that.
Yeah, yeah. There's
But
very little critical thinking taught in the schools. You know, very little
yeah.
critical. It's a lot of regurgitation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing as martial arts, right? Because you were talking about forms. When I took a kung fu school, they only teach you forms, right? And they rank you with slashes, whatever that is. Like as you get older, you want to simplify things, right? Because I remember when I was younger, I used to fight, get into fights. You know, always fast moving to scare people, right? But I noticed Wing Chun was simpler, right? To be able to just direct the movement and punch. That's why I like it. But for you, it seemed like you like soft style, right? It's almost like kind of like connection with Tai Chi, almost. But how you like? Is it like your style is soft, like style?
Well, the body needs to be able to change, right? So I need to be able to go from soft to hard if I need to. The
Mm.
um, I prefer soft because soft means I don't get injured. If somebody hits me and I'm soft, I don't get injured. If I'm hard and I get hit, something gets hurt, something gets bruised. I keep it inside, right? I might keep that trauma inside of me, and then I have problems, right? That trauma grows. It could be something of just simply having your pride. You know, people come up with that big tension, and somebody hits them in that tension, and then they either get angry, right? But if they get defeated, then they get, oh, you know, like they feel bad about themselves. So either way, if you're working on sticking to that tension, that, you know, that strength, that ego, you know, you're gonna end up damaged in some way, traumatized in some way. You're gonna take that home with you, right? You either go home and you feel bad because you got defeated, or you go home and you have a higher opinion of yourself because you won, right? So rather than saying, you know, more like Zen, right? Like where you want to just be completely calm and objective about what's happening. If you're soft, you know, like Bruce Lee used to say, move like water, right? You want to move like water. You want to be adaptable to whatever's happening at the time. So if I'm hard style all the time, I can only do what that hard style allows me to do. If I'm soft all the time, then, you know, maybe I might be lacking an ability to act. I might be lacking a certain assertiveness that I need at a certain moment, a certain critical moment. So it's being adaptable and understanding that these different things, this soft, this hard, this you know, aggressiveness or passiveness, they're all just tools. And you just have to learn to be sensitive to your environment so that you can choose which tool to use at the appropriate time. You know, so I don't have any problem with any other martial art or anything like that. It's just that for me, like, they're tools. And, you know, what Systema is teaching you is to be sensitive to your environment, to access the right tool at the right time. So, you know, or make it up. You know, you might have to make up a tool at the last minute. Maybe all you have with you is your car keys, right? How can you utilize your car keys? You know, and it's not just martial. I mean, I use the Systema breathing all the time. Like, whenever you're stressed out, like one time I was working with a dog. I do a little bit of behavior modification with dogs, right? And I had an aggressive dog that wanted to bite me, right? The dog was there staring me down and like ready to bite me, and huge dog, like 90, 95 pounds, right? Ready to just lunge at me. And I just took a deep breath, calm myself, because if I gave any aggression to this dog, it would be a challenge. If I backed off, the dog would have chased me, right? So I just kind of held neutral, and the dog lunged at me. I stepped to the side, I tapped him in the ribs nicely, right, just to let him know I was there. I stepped out, and then I immediately stepped into his space, and I stood up tall, and he just sat there and stared at me.
Really?
We just had like this mutual understanding at that point that, hey, listen, you know, I got you, you know, this is not something that you want to do. And for the rest of the session, the dog didn't, you know, and I think, to me, like, that's martial arts in a nutshell right there. Is, you know, you have something aggressive coming at you, you have to remain calm, because maybe being aggressive back to that dog is not the answer, or being aggressive back to that attacker is not the answer. Maybe there's something else, right? Show the attacker that it's not worth it to attack you in some way, you know. So we have these different things that we can talk about. You know, that's not every scenario. I mean, you know, if somebody really wants to hurt you with a knife and they have a knife, they're not going to show you the knife. All that knife dispense stuff we see in the movies and stuff, you know, it doesn't work, because they just walk up behind you and they stab you in the back. They don't they don't show you the knife. You know, so like, you have to understand that these different scenarios, these different things need different tools. And, you know, I saw that with that dog, that, you know, that dog needed to be shown that you can't hurt me. I'm not going to let you hurt me, but I'm in control of the situation, and I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not any threat to you. Because his aggression came from a sense of fear. He was afraid of me. That's why he attacked. You know, so I have to understand that and be compassionate towards that. You know, and that's what Systema has been teaching me. You know, it's you know, not everything needs to be a fist. You know, some things are an open hand as well. You know.
I have a sense. Is it like the Systema, right? Or I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. So, but this system is pretty unique, right? This is the first I ever like hear in a while. Like, it's blown my mind. Like, of course, you hear all the kung fu, all the karate, but this is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
like when you just say it like that, it just clicks. Like, wow, that's pretty. Is it associated into any religion? I just want to know, like, because it almost has like.
Yeah, I mean, they don't. It's created by the Russians, right? Vladimir Vasilev and Mikhail Rebko, and so they're heavily inspired by the Russian Orthodox Church and the philosophy behind the Russian Orthodox Church. So, I mean, you know, you don't have to be religious to do it, obviously, but there's plenty of people who aren't Russian Orthodox in Systema. But they, you know, they took a lot from that philosophy, and it's I think that's why it really, in my opinion, I think that's where it really went the way of like being a self-inquiry art, you know, kind of asking yourself bigger questions, you know, how do I handle life, you know?
Like,
Yeah.
so basically, it's training your mind, body, as second nature, right? To use your body as a tool in any second when you're in a situation where you need to use it, like what Bruce Lee said, where it become a weapon, the fist, in like Into the Dragon, whatever that is, but your body become a weapon at that moment, your mind, right? That's pretty beautiful. So we got the how you really start doing martial arts. Um,
Yeah,
for
Vassov said something similar too. He's the founder of my organization, and he said, you can't be looking for a fight, but you always have to be ready for one.
mm, okay,
It's
that
quite
one,
interesting.
yeah,
And
yeah.
you should check him out. Like his videos on YouTube and everything, absolutely phenomenal. But really what's happening is not what you see, it's what's happening inside, you know? And, you know,
Hmm. It's almost like as if like this martial art is also like internal,
yes,
right?
very
Okay, it's almost like wait,
internal, internally, external are not exclusive. They're not exclusive. That's something that, you know, we hear a lot. They're not exclusive. They're one and the same. They're completely intertwined. You know, they're not separate from each other.
it's almost like the yin and the yang, right? The symbol. Hmm. Very interesting what you just said there. Because there is an ancient philosophy. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called the Hermetic philosophy. It's based upon natural laws. I know it's get weird, but it's as if it's like laws of cause and effect, right? Or every action there's an equal reactions intertwined, right? So it's like that. Um, how, for anyone who's starting wanting to go into this amazing system, which now I really want to look into because what you say, where can they begin like practicing? What is like how they begin to practice this when they get started? It's not any like traditional martial arts, right?
Well, you need to this is not something that you can do on your own at all. You need to go to a class. You need to find a teacher, and the best way to do that is to go to the headquarters website, which is RussianMartialArt.com, I believe. You can just type in Vladimir Vasilev's name or Mikhail Rebko, and it'll take you to their home pages. And then they usually have a search that tells you you can do it by zip code or by country of all the schools that are in their organization, and you can just find one near you or a group. And another option would be is if you don't have one near you, because this is still like it's not a commercial system like all the other systems that are out there right now. It's not as widely popular as everything else, but it's getting more popular, a lot more popular. So what you might have to do is go visit the headquarters school, one of the headquarters schools, either in Russia or in Toronto, Canada, and stay there for a week or two. Make it your vacation. Stay there for a week or two, get an Airbnb, and just train with the master for a little while with Vladimir Vasilev, and you will be completely floored. And then what you could do is go back home, and if you want to continue your studies, you start your own meetup group, and you get people coming in that want to work on it with you. And eventually over time you could become an instructor as well if you dedicate yourself to it. And that's how all these schools get started, is by people who are interested, but there's nobody around them teaching it. So they're martial artists that want to learn more, so they go to see the master. They spend 2-3 weeks with him every year. They come back, they put their groups together, and this is how the schools start to develop. So that's
Uh,
how
do
you,
you,
that's how you learn.
Thank you so much. Do you have? Because I also want to help you. Do you have any class that people can join, or you're an instructor, right? Or
Yes. I do workshops mostly right now, and my teacher, Edgar Sakul, is in New York City. He has Systema in New York City, and I teach there when he's not around, and I have my own workshops in New York. I also have a group in Jersey City that we meet up once in a while. It's a little less informal, so I send around an email and everybody signs up, you know, and sometimes I have 5 people, sometimes I have 20, you never know. And then we have the meetup. Either we meet in the park or at my home training space, and we train. You know, so the best thing to do is just contact somebody who teaches and find out how they do it. Everybody does it differently.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that. For those who have any fear or doubt, did you have any fear or doubt, and how did you overcome it in whether it's life or your martial arts, and you know how you deal with that?
Breathing, breathing, and Systema is all about fear. We spend all our time talking about fear. You know, how do we control our fear, right? How do we still remain calm? And it always comes back to breathing and relaxation. You know, something happens. What's the first thing that happens when something scary happens? You hold your breath, right? We tense up. So we learn to release. You know, we release that, we relax, and we find our own structure, right? And then from there, we can make better decisions for what's happening. So I'm constantly using Systema. I'm using it for this interview. I notice I get a little wound up a little bit, right, about what I'm talking about. I have to calm myself down, take a deep breath. Okay, all right, now I can come back to you at a better pace, right? So so the fear for me is an ongoing study constantly, you know.
Okay, that's very interesting. I never like hear that anyway, approached that way before. Because I remember in in the kung fu world, they don't even talk about those things at all, right? But that because you know it's a for me it's that's why I asked on an interview because you know a lot of people it's a universal, right? So I have to ask so they can get over the fear, right? Because um, fear plays a very like the news, for example, right? The news is very. I don't watch the news. It's very
They prey on fear. Yeah.
yeah, and it controlled the mind, right? If you look deeply, it controlled the mind, and so does school, right? And nobody want to actually talk about it. But today, also, I want to talk about what is your passion in life and what you love to do.
Well, martial arts, obviously. That's my main thing. That's where I spend all my time on. So I'm also a musician. I started as a musician years ago. I haven't been doing it so much the last couple of years, but I still love music, and you know, I go back to it once in a while. Um, uh, Dogs. I like working with dogs and animals. You know, I do a little dog training once in a while. You know, some behavior modification. It's interesting to me. It's more Systema though, in my opinion. Kind of understanding, you know, the animal part of us. I enjoy that. I enjoy, you know, I experiment with other movement systems. I experimented with Feldenkrais. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Wait, what was it? Like, what was it?
Feldenkrais.
No, I never heard of that before. What
It's
is
a
it?
it's a movement system for helping people with injuries and pain. I've also experimented with parkour. I'm still playing around with parkour. Familiar with parkour?
Yeah, I know of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I don't
jumping,
do it. But
climbing, you know, things like that. Yeah, hiking. Uh, you know, I still train other martial arts because I want to feel what other martial arts bring out in me, and how can I hold up in other martial arts. So I still go to BJJ schools once in a while. I play with some Jeet Kune Do guys, which are my favorite guys to play with, because they don't just do one scenario; they'll do everything. You know, so they're a lot of fun. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
it's yeah, okay, thank you. It seems like you're very open-minded though, like for martial arts.
Yes.
Because you know, for me, though I don't do each and every other martial arts, right? Though I imagine I would like to, right? But you know, nothing wrong. You know, I remember back then, I used to research a lot of taekwondo and karate. I like because it's different. But a lot of people have their one thing, right? It's like I know people don't like it's okay. Let me give you an example. It's, martial arts, each aspect of system, it's almost like religion, right? If we look at it like that way, right? Where I used to be Buddhist, so let's put it this way: a lot of people who have a mindset of Buddhism or Christian, they think their religion is right, while all the other is wrong. So it's the same thing as people who are a one-track mindset with other systems, right? And they said my system is right while yours is wrong. But I see it as if like they're all connected, but it's different. But I mean, it's different. But what I'm saying is they're all unique. So, most people would bash on it, but it's cool, right?
To me, they're kind of all doing the same thing. They're studying motor control. They're just studying motor control skills, right? And what you're looking at when you go to like Wing Chun or karate, or you're going to, jujitsu, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're studying technique, you're just studying somebody's preferences. You're studying somebody's preferred way to do that. An arm bar is an arm bar. It doesn't matter if you're it doesn't matter if you're doing it this way or you're doing it this way or you're doing it this way. An arm bar is an arm bar. Okay? You're controlling the person's bodies, the person's spine through the elbow, and you have a choice between breaking or controlling. Right? It doesn't matter which martial art you're doing, it's an arm bar. You can call it whatever you want. You could think your arm bar is better than somebody else's. But the thing that's going to make your arm bar better than the other guys is the tactics, is your tactics. Being able to get in position to use your arm bar. And that's what we study in Systema is the tactic. How do I get in position to use my tools? Not, okay, my tools are better than your tools. It's how do I get in position to use whatever it is that I got? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
an arm bar is an arm bar. It's physics. The human body only moves in so many different ways. I mean, that's why, you see jiu-jitsu guy, you see an Aikido guy, you see, what's the Chinese martial art that does the joint locks and things? I can't remember. Usually,
China, China.
yeah, China, yeah. And it doesn't matter which one you're doing. They're all going to be similar. You can only control the body with joint locks in so many different ways. So, it's going to come down to preferences, and depending on what your body and your personality is, you're going to gravitate towards the martial art that speaks to you, your preferences, which preferences look good to you, which ones feel good for you. So you'll go to that martial art. That's generally what's going to happen.
I like that mindset. I love it. What you all like, freak, man. That's like
Okay.
that's so awesome, though. Like what you said there, like it blew my mind, man. Like I love it, man. I love your personality. I love you, man. Like this is like pretty amazing. Not in a weird way, but like the what you express, right? I think that uh, you you talk about expression, right? Martial arts is expression, right? So many of the words don't express themselves, so you express it through your art, right? So how does yoga connect with your martial arts, or how did you get into yoga? Does it connect?
Oh, yes, yes. I tend in my life to look for the similarities in things, not the differences as much. The differences are, like we said, preferences. It's just a preference. But the breathing is almost exactly the same in both yoga and in Systema. It's quite interesting. And much like martial arts, yoga has become more of a fitness thing and a technical thing than a principle thing in the modern world, right? Classical yoga was not so rigid or cookie cutter as it is right now, as it's presented in most places. Yoga was actually intended. I do classical yoga, not the modern yoga. Classical yoga, which was intended to be um, given from teacher to student directly. Okay, and then the student has to go and have their own daily practice that they do every day on their own, by themselves, without anybody telling them to do it. And then they come back to the teacher for more information to adjust the practice, learn more of the philosophy and things like that. And it required a lot of self-dedication and self-inquiry and self-study. And, but what it's turned into is basically a fitness class in most places. You go in, the teacher runs you through the movements, and you have all these gorgeous dancers with hypermobile bodies teaching everybody. And I used to go to yoga because I wanted to stretch out, I wanted to get more flexible, and I wanted to be less tense. And I ended up getting injured all the time because I had these really hypermobile people asking me to twist myself up like a pretzel, and I couldn't do it. And I thought there was something wrong with me, but there's nothing wrong with me. There was something wrong with the way it was being taught. You know, I could get, you know, once again, this is something they say in my tradition of yoga, which is the Krishnamacharya Desikachar tradition, which is older than any of the modern stuff going on right now. And they say the function must create the form, not the other way around. So the function of the pose, the function of what you're doing must create the shape, not the other way around. So this is something that is very similar in Systema as well, right? The function of what I need to do creates where I put my body, okay? So for example, you know, if in yoga, they have you do this thing, right? Where you bring your hands up like this, but look at how it closes my shoulders. My shoulders are closed. The whole point of bringing your arms above your head is to open your chest. So if my chest isn't opened when I do this, this is not right for my body. I have to bring my arms out to the side and up. This opens my chest. So that's a better movement for me. So the yoga that I do is more customized to the individual rather than trying to fit everybody into their box, you know, which is what causes injury. So that means anybody could do yoga. You know, somebody in a wheelchair could do yoga. You know, my 90-year-old grandmother could do yoga, you know, rather than, you know, saying, okay, only if you're hypermobile and you can, you know, do this and put your foot behind your head, can you do yoga? Which is what I think, you know, kind of the message is when you go to one of these classes. It's very scary, you know. So the style of yoga that I do is just like Systema. The function creates the form, not the other way around. And it's also very heavy in philosophy and, you know, practicality. So, you know, everything is very pragmatic.
What you say is pretty interesting when you just woke me up like in an instant, right? Because you just say like you can't fit everything in the box and you can get injured, right? I think it's the same thing as forms. They're technical. They're made to not to offend any martial artists out there, but it's flowery, and they're trying to fit us into a box. It's the same thing as society. If you, I always put this in as a matrix. If we ever watch the Matrix, the school system or the dream world, people act like robots. People don't think. People don't think for themselves. So they conform to whatever their parents, their families, their friends. They conform instead of being themselves to express, right? And that's what I hear, meaning that if you in life in general, right, when you put things into a box, you get injured, meaning yourself, your
Yes.
heart. And I can sense that. Thank you so much for like saying that. It like put the pieces together that what I'm trying to get my message out there, because I think that oftentimes we try to follow a certain way, like for martial arts, whatever life, we get injured inside our hearts or regrets, whatever that is. That's thank you. You're an awesome person.
It's not,
Uh,
yeah, like you said, physically, it's mentally injuring, right? It's mentally damaging to, and then, people stick to these patterns that aren't necessarily good for us simply because they're familiar. Just simply because they're familiar, rather than trying to examine their patterns and make better decisions, um, that's what this yoga and this martial art is to me. It's you're no habits, right? There's no such thing as a good habit. I mean, there is no such thing as a good habit, because habits are something done without any thought, without any awareness. It's just something you do. So there's nothing healthy about that. You're not paying attention to what you are actually doing in your life. You're just going through the motions, and there's so much to pay attention to around you, so many beautiful things happening. Why would you want to just skip over them and just go through the motions just to get it out of the way? it's very damaging. Just think of you might have a really wonderful pattern in martial arts, right? You might have a great movement that you have programmed into your mind that you can access like that, right? But what happens when somebody disrupts that pattern? We've all felt that. Somebody disrupts that pattern, we get hurt, we get injured. Maybe we don't get injured or hurt physically, but psychologically, we're lost. That pattern was disrupted. I don't know what to do now. I'm stuck, right? Have you ever felt that? Like we still feel it. I still feel it all the time. I do this thing that has worked for me for so long, and then all of a sudden it doesn't work. Now I don't know what to do. Rather than learning that, oh, this doesn't work. Okay, I got something else. Does this make sense? So
yeah.
Being willing to change and adjust and make that conscious decision to change. It's something that's it's something that's neglected, I think, in a lot of areas.
Yeah. I believe to be too. Like it's hard. For instance, I do understand. When I listen to you saying change, right? Change is necessary. A lot of people are, for example, you use Instagram, right?
Yes.
And so many of the older generation, they're always on Facebook and they're trying to build their Facebook on their business on Facebook only. But that's one they don't like change, so they're afraid. So for me, I don't know if you know Gary Vee. You know Gary Vee? All right. He is a very successful entrepreneur. He built his wine library. He's a bricks and mortar guy, but he teaches to be you gotta taste, right? Social media like Twitter, Instagram, like you're doing, because I found you on Instagram, right? And they have, or you found me actually. You found me. Um, but so many of the people are not adapting to the social media. I mean, it's great that we get to talk to with each other like this. Like it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But time is changing, and people don't like change. People want to put the way it was. But I understand what you're saying, and thank you for making it so clear that I can see it like as a whole. It's like I'm trying to figure out what you're saying. Yeah, I felt that before. Like when you try to like do the fixed pattern and they break the your what you're trying to do. I felt it before. I remember.
Mm-hmm.
It's also the same thing as when technology or anything that disrupts something, right? It's basically disruption. Anything your core value, your core belief, they disrupt it. And we don't like change. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. I try to get my message out there that like for example, I interview authors. They want to get their message out there, right? And they're comfortable with Facebook, but now they have YouTube. YouTube is great for authors or experts to promote whatever their service or product. That's good for them, but change. So that's my thing. But thank you so much for that.
Yep.
I did have one more. Oh yeah, what is your music? Because you say you play music. What is your favorite music or what instrument you play?
Um, well, I guess my principal was guitar, but I had more of a producer mentality. So I played around with a couple other instruments, bass. I did drums at one point, piano. I didn't do any of them well. I just played around with them. I wanted to understand how the whole band worked. So I learned as many instruments as I could. And the only one I ever got, proficient at was guitar and a little bit of bass. But yeah, I was never that good. I was never good enough to do it professionally, even though I tried. But I loved it anyway. I tried to, still try, still play. I love it.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Hold on, sorry. Bubble. But I enjoy your talking. Like you're very comfortable to talk to. You're a pleasure to talk to. how you define winning. Now, here's the thing. I in the few couple minutes that we talk, or hours, whatever, half an hour, we you touch on bases. You don't want you're an aggressive person, right? But you're not competitive. So most spiritual people or most people think winning is competitive.
Mhm.
But as I do interview, it's not really. It's people happiness. Winning is their happiness for the family, whatever. What is yours?
Good health, being healthy, every sense of the word healthy. And if you think about it, if you want to study self-defense, right? Why are you doing it? For your health, right? If you want to win a match, if you want to win a competition, you're doing it for your ego, right? You want to survive the competition. If you want to come out healthy, then you're doing it for your health. And most people don't do martial arts to win competitions. They don't. They do it to better themselves. They do it because it's fun. They do it because it's a way to get out of the house, I guess. It's a hobby, whatever. Most people, and some people, a lot of people who go to Systema at least have more of a sense of self-inquiry, right? Um, they,
What do you mean by sorry? What do you mean by self inquiry? You keep mentioning that. What do you mean by that?
they're
Can you?
interested in who they are and what they can handle, and what's going on with them, what's going on with their body, what's wrong, what's going right, what's going wrong, what are their emotions when certain things happen. Maybe somebody has digestive problems, right? And they're trying to figure out a way to move around the digestive problems, or might have sprained ankle, but how can I work around the sprained ankle? Like I had a student a little while ago. He got a case of hip sciatica because of pinched nerve, pinched disc, right? And so he comes in with the pinched disc, and he's like, I can't really do martial arts today. Could we do a healing session? You know, and I used my knowledge of Systema. He's like, I can't even put my socks on. He's like, getting out of bed and putting my socks on is absolutely excruciating. So we spent an hour and a half session figuring out, okay, well, let's see how we can relax and which ways can we move that don't hurt. So we spent the whole session figuring out how he can get from the ground to standing, back down to the ground, and put his socks on without any pain. And we were able to do it by the end of the hour and a half session using methods from Systema and from yoga. And it's absolutely, and some stuff that I stole from Feldenkrais too, that I should mention. But it's all about, like, he had to go through a process of self-discovery, rather than saying, oh, I'm in pain, let me take some pills and let me just sit on my ass for a couple of days until it gets better. He was like, no, how can I go through this process? And he wanted to discover that, and I was happy to facilitate it. And that to me is what self-inquiry is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, yes. Thank you so much. That makes sense. Where can we find? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. What was it?
You can go the spiritual route too, like, why am I here? What's in the universe and all that. And that's fine too. But there's different types of self-inquiry.
Wait, can you say that again? Wait, you said spiritual and why we're here. Okay,
You
can you say that again?
can look at self-inquiry as just something spiritual too. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Like,
can you go deep into that? Because you actually hit home. Because
that's be something also that's very personal. Like that's going to be different for you than it is for me. Like,
well, I mean, well, the reason why I asked that because
yeah,
back in before I get all these whatever books, right? There's something weird that's happening with me, right? So it's just through experience, right?
yes.
How I explain this?
The way I
Like,
put it is, there in let's take a look at like the yoga philosophy
mhm,
opinion of this. Like, it's not a religion; it's a philosophy, right? That
mhm.
everything that we think and that we do is merely just a process of our mind and a process of our body. When you take all that away, when you take away the thoughts are basically like the operating system on your computer, right? It's just operating. But what's at the core of your computer, right? There's a processor there, right? And it's like the same thing. So in yoga philosophy, we're not our thoughts, right? We're something else. There's something intangible at the very, very center, the root of who we are. And we want to learn to act from that place, not from a place that is filled with thoughts and fleeting emotions and things like that that aren't really us at the very core. So your question, the self-inquiry would be questioning what is that, you know, if you're looking at it from a yoga philosophical standpoint, is what is that place and how can I make my decisions from there rather than, you know, all the random thoughts that come through our brain. Because that's just a tool. Thoughts are just a tool. They're not us. They're just a tool. So that's the yoga philosophy idea of self-inquiry, and then, you know, acting from a source that is you. You know, in, you know, if you wanted to get into other spirituality and thing like that, it all really just comes down to what's your relationship to something higher than yourself. Pretty much any religion can be summed up in that way. What is your relationship to God? What is your relationship to the universe? What is your relationship to, you know, this set of principles? And, you know, that could be summed up in your in self-inquiry, like a spiritual sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense because that was thank you for making it clear because that's what I was trying to explain to you, right? I
Yeah.
had a unique experience actually
Mm-hmm.
when I broke up with my ex, right, back in 2011. I was lost, right? Well, a lot of people are lost, but mine was like I don't know who I was. I don't know. It was a scary time, right? I was going through a very dark time and I was trying to make sense. Why was we born here and die? Why we have to? Why is there so much chaos in the world? Why is there? Why do we have to? What was it? Be born, and then die, right? And you question all these, like you said, you gotta like you question, right? So that's what happened. Like I start going through where a phrase what I call the shatter of the glass, meaning that the way that we see the world is nothing but a belief system from someone else's idea from generations or the thoughts of someone programmed into our mind. So we look at the world through the lens, right? We even though we see with the physical eyes, but it's our brain that interpret reality. People say, perception is reality, but they don't really understand it. If they look deeper to the perception, right? It's the ideas and beliefs that controls the lens where they see the world, right? It controls how they act toward themselves and toward other people in the world. And
Right. And then like the self-inquiry portion of that is like, how can I, you know, get rid of all that noise and act from a place that is genuinely me? What is my belief? You know, after what I've experienced, what is my belief? What is my way of interpreting this? What's my way of doing these things? Rather than, you know, what's my parents' way of interpreting this? What's my teacher's way of interpreting this? And, you know, to me, that's what makes a good teacher, is a teacher that gives you that that freedom and encourages you to do that. You know, to say, you know, what's my systema? What's my yoga? What's my way of interacting with the universe? You know, rather than saying, oh, I have to do it the way this guy does it, or, you know, I have to be like Bruce Lee. No, I can't be like Bruce Lee. I'll never be like Bruce Lee. You know, it's like once we kind of get rid of that, like, oh, well, this guy does this, so I got to do this. My priest does this, so I got to do this. You know, rather than saying, you know, what's appropriate for me, and how can I act authentically. You know, and that's philosophy. You know.
that's what you say is so powerful, right? That's like the core essence of what people in the personal development or the spiritual they're starting to become more authentic of who they are, right? They don't want to like because I feel like most people are like robots. They don't live authentically, right? They
Well,
don't.
they're not. They're just they're caught up. They're caught up in what is expected of them, and they're not robots. They're caught up in what's expected of them. They haven't been given the permission to actually access that thing in themselves. And there's, you know, all these other things, all these other systems that around us take the form of tension in the body, tension in the mind. And They're surrounded by tension all the time because they have these expectations that are just pushed on them all the time, you know, or they have responsibilities. It's really, really tough with responsibilities. You got a family, you got a job, you got kids, you got take the dog out for a walk, you know, things like that. And you got to pick up the groceries, the dry cleaning, you know, and it just turns into like, they don't take any time for themselves. And it's not that they're robots. It's just that they don't know how to just take 5 minutes out of their day and access that part of themselves, you know. And I think that's, you know, that's what we're trying to do in martial arts. So at least in Systema and in yoga is we're supposed to be accessing that. That's why I think going to a yoga class is ultimately self-defeating, because you're not taking the time to deal with you. You're going there, you're following the teacher puts on music, you just copy what's happening. You're not taking the time to like say, okay, well, what is going on with this asana? What is going on with this pose? What's happening with me when I do this? And how can I improve? You know, they haven't been given any permission. Nobody gives them permission to just be themselves. And that's a huge problem.
It's that stuff you're like saying we get to feel, right? To like feel, like also to feel and to be able to observe around us. Because right now, what you're doing is you're by when you even though this is just an interview, it's not just an interview, right? You're actually teaching me and you're teaching the audience new way of thinking. Like I'm grateful for that. Like because you know it comes naturally to well well I don't know, but you've been like teaching instructing so many long years that it's naturally flowing through you and you're teaching me right now. I'm grateful for that. Thank you for this amazing talk. That's thank you.
Thank you.
But you're absolutely right. We don't get to be able to feel whether or to experience or to observe, right? Like it's the same thing as in school. Like we get to say, but we don't get to be able to like how you say it? It's the same thing as when people judge you based on your grades, right?
Yeah.
When people think like you're you know A, then your intelligence if you're D, but you have your whatever not intelligent, but people who go by that is very misconcepted, right?
Yeah.
Because if you know Steve Jobs and or you know the you know Apple's whatever, you know drop out of college, whatever. These people, you know, how I say, they didn't do what's popular or didn't fit in the box like the Systema. And what I noticed
Great.
is
One thing
that
that's yeah, sorry.
what,
One thing that's changed for me over the years too, especially since I started teaching and I started working with kids, is like to not be dismissive. Like like we say like, oh, you know, look at that person, look how they're acting, you know, things like that. Like when I work with little kids and like you have that one kid that's really bad and acting out in class, right? That's the kid that actually needs your compassion more than any of the other kids. Yeah, the other kids are behaving and they want to learn, but like that one kid that's having the really hard time, you know, just like you were saying, like some people walk around like they're robots, they're in that robotic mentality. Those are the people that need our compassion more than anybody else. You know, those are the people that need that. An aggressive person, a person who feels aggressive all the time, this is coming from a place of fear and trauma. So those are the people that actually need that type of permission to examine themselves. They need that more than anybody else. You know, somebody like you. It's not saying that you don't need that. You clearly have an artist mentality, and you like to explore things and study things, and that's wonderful. But a lot of people don't feel they have the permission to do that. They don't feel like they have any right, or like, oh, you know, they dismiss it, and then we dismiss them, and you know, there's a lot of dismissive attitudes out in the world right now, especially with politics and things like that. And like, we could use a lot less of it. You know, that's part of the problem that's happening right now. Oh, you don't agree with my political views, or, you know, you're a bad person, you know, and it's really toxic.
well, yeah, I do agree with you. It's I mean, it's not that I'm not well. how I said, there's an area where in my life where you know I was a class clown. I was a troublemaker. I get into fights. I don't. I rebel. I don't do what my mom want me to do. I I skip school, and the reason why, the reason why is because I don't feel like a lot of time when I express myself, people don't like it, right? When I do my things like the way that it's not society, right, want me to do, you know, and they often judge you for it. It's the same thing as politics. I don't want to get into politics. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing as people why you hate that person, but yet you don't know why you hate that. Because I asked a friend before, because I knew for a fact that she hates the person, but I understand why because of the parents' influence, but also the reason why I that's why I do these interviews to be able to let. That's why I'm grateful that you do these interviews because to be able to let people be themselves, right? It's this is the whole aspect what I'm trying to do to be able to release their potential in the world because I didn't have that. I wasn't like you said. The people who were the kids who were making trouble, they're the most like have the potential, and I agree with you. And
Yeah.
the people who just do A's or whatever, they're they have a fixed mindset. While the other kids they have a growth, they're curious. No, I was very by nature I'm very curious. When I was a kid, I remember I was on a computer first time, and I wanted to learn language, but I didn't know how. Like many languages, same thing as you can tell the difference now that martial arts from language because I want to connect the dots because we're all one family, right? Because religions, if you religions, languages, people, and culture is the same, man. That's why I'm trying to do the interviews, man. Try to connect with each other, not to separate. Because what we're doing right now is separating each other,
Yes.
you know. So
Good. That's
that's it.
very good. That's a very good intention to have, you know, especially these days.
Yeah. But thank you so much for making it clear. Like like you said, we gotta have compassion with these people. But how can, if, for an example, how can we have compassion for them?
Mhm. That's the tough part. You know, I live New York City, so you know they're actually it's one of the better cities that as far as having programs for people who are underprivileged and things like that, but they still can't get to everybody. And I think it's just you know just be a good person. That's what my teacher always says to us is just you know just be a good person. Just be nice to people. That's all you have to do. You know, it's really not anything. You don't have to go out and you know commit a whole bunch of money to charity or anything like that. Just be nice to somebody. You don't know what somebody's going through. You have no idea. You know, somebody comes into let's look at a dojo, right? Or like any martial arts training scenario. That guy comes in and he's a little angry, he's got a little chip on his shoulder, and he wrestles with you, he fights with you, and you feel like he's really trying to hurt you. You don't know that he's really trying to hurt you. He's working through something else of his own. If he's like that, there's some other trauma in him. Either it's a physical injury or a past relationship, or you know, maybe he was beat up a lot as a kid, and you know, this is his way of compensating. And you know, you have to instead of like trying to match that energy and like fight back, like take a deep breath. Just bring yourself, you know, system again, breathing, relaxation, find your structure, and then decide what to do. But don't do it from, don't let that person's projection change you. You know, just there's something else going on there, right? All aggression comes from fear. We know this. All aggression comes from fear. So you need to have mental steadiness. You need to be calm whenever anything around you is regressive, whether it's at work or you know on the mat at martial arts. You know, just always just try to be a good person in everything. And you know, you're gonna fail. I get angry once in a while too. I get pissed. You know, it's just it's part of your human nature. And then forgive yourself when you do. You know, try to do better next time.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Like, For me, I'm very passionate, right? To be able to help people because that's what I want to do. That's why I want to get so because most of the interview that I do usually they say, "Oh, you're very passionate about this," and yeah, I'll do it, you know. But I feel like you're a very gentle soul, like because it brings my mind. You're a very gentle person. I feel like it, you know.
I, I
Um,
I have my aggressive tendencies too.
But I feel like you're very gentle, like when you express. But yeah, you're right. We get to, I do get, failure, right? Again, when it comes to school or whatever, we program that failures and mistakes are a no-no, right? And that we're to the what's it bypass that and try to be perfect, right? But in life, it's nothing perfect, man. Like no, that's not like how it works.
Uh,
Um,
and I'm like, it's, I lose all the time. I'm a small guy. I'm like 5'5", right? I'm 150 pounds, and I lose in fights all the time. But I'm not going to let that stop me from teaching martial arts. I mean, everybody's different. I have guys that I fight with guys that are 220 pounds and have been doing martial arts 10, 15, 20, sometimes 30 years longer than me. And it's, I just have to accept that fact that, you know, uh, I have a skill set, but, I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to win all the time. I actually learn more from losing. You have to be okay with losing, be okay with screwing up, if you really want to grow, you know. So you have to be okay with getting angry, and then the whole thing is like, do you get angry and stay angry? Like, say you have a fight with your girlfriend or something, you just get angry and stay angry for like 3-4 days at a time, or do you just say, okay, you know what, honey, give me an hour. I'm gonna take a walk. I'm gonna go down and get an ice cream. I'll come back and then we'll discuss. Okay, let everything calm down, and just like try to act from another place that's a little bit more logical, right? Whether or not the other person cooperates with you is another story, but it's that's yeah, and we it's a constant process.
to this whole talk, you're an awesome person. You know that? Like, thank you for doing what you do, man. Thank you.
Thanks, and I really appreciate what you're doing. You seem to have a very clear intention, and you want to do good things. That's wonderful.
Yeah, thank you. Um, where can we find you online
Find me.
or anywhere, like online or offline, whatever? Where
Um,
can,
I have my I'm doing business as GU Movement, JIYU Movement. It's a Japanese name. It means freedom, autonomy. Um, www.gu.us, JIYU.us.
why you chose that name? I'm just curious. That's your business, right?
Yeah, that's just my business name. I needed a business name, and I did Japanese martial arts for so many years that I liked. I looked for a word that kind of described what I do, and I want to teach people to be, you know, freer and more autonomous, in their practices. So that's what I took into my martial arts, my yoga, and my movement system that I created. So that's what I took as a name.
Okay, this is very beautiful, then. Like, it's very beautiful. Thank you. Um, one more, and then we go. Uh, what does success look like to you?
Uh, Same answer as the last one. Health, good health, good health. Every aspect of that: physical, mental, career, social health.
Okay. Would you ever write like a martial art book? Just saying.
Say that again.
Like, I said, would you ever write a book or a martial art book or a Systema book?
Actually, working on a book of breathing and movement exercises, linking the movement and the breath, and I'm going to do a video on that very shortly. It's still in the process. I've just been a little too busy to finish it, and I'm thinking, I don't feel like I'm an authority on martial arts. I don't feel like I'm at that level or I'm that type of person. What I would probably do is write excerpts on movement and healthy movement. That's probably where I would go. As far as martial arts go, like it's you know, we both know it's a very, very weird industry. You know, there's a lot of hate out on the internet and things like that. And, you know, to put myself in that position, it's, I don't want to add to the negativity out there. So I would want to do something that's a little bit more, maybe another 20 years, I'll write a book on martial arts. Give me 20 more years. And I'll write something. Right now it's movement stuff, and like how can you take something practical, you know, like breathing and movement exercises. How can you calm yourself, calm your psyche? How can you move better, freer, you know, with less restrictions? That's more what I'm going to be putting out in video and writing in the next couple.
No, but you are absolutely right. Definitely right. There's so much negativity
Yeah.
on like this guy channel. Like it's like he have like 800 or something. I'm not bashing. It's like I'm always like try to be positive, right? And they're like, keyboard warriors. They're like, yeah, man. All the negativity. I was like, oh my god, come on, man. Just like, whoa, man.
You see the comments on Systema. Oh my God, they're horrible. They bash Systema so hard, but like none of them have ever tried it. Nobody's ever even walked into a school and actually tried it. They bash Vladimir Vasilev and like Martin Wheeler, and these people like can wipe the floor with 90% of the population. And these people have never even walked in. Why? Because they're doing smooth movement. And they're like, that's not real. They don't believe it. So like, and it's all these internet people that just sit at home. They have nothing better to do. None of them have any actual martial arts experience, but there's so much hate out there. Everybody with an opinion, and I don't knock any martial art, because here's how I feel. If you love it and you're getting something out of it, there's nothing wrong with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the martial art that you're doing if you love it and you're getting something out of it. If it makes your life better, if it makes you a better person, great. Then do it. It's fantastic. I mean, why would I bash it?
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
But that same thing goes for me. Like I when I interview, I want to interview like taekwondo and all those because I want to connect with martial arts together. It's always been my great what was it, curiosity. But since I have an open mind, because usually people who bash on other systems, they have very close mind, right?
Yeah.
I don't mean to say, my friend, he's very close-minded. So the thing with this is that he have a different. He used to take kung fu, but he takes Filipino martial arts. But he also bash on other martial arts, whatever. But I come from a place of open-minded. You can learn from anyone. You can learn from different, whatever religion, languages, anything, right? It's just that you have to come from that place. Thank you for that. But also, if you're gonna be writing that book, I hope that you're in the process of finishing it, so I can help you promote your book if you would like.
Well, we're gonna do the video very soon in August. I'm gonna shoot the video. It's gonna be breathing. The whole theme is linking movement and breath, which is something that's not discussed very often in the fitness industry. Yoga and Systema talk about it. I think maybe Tai Chi talks about it too, Qigong. But when you let the breath move the body rather than breathing as an afterthought, right? Or trying to catch up, you actually stop using as much tension in the body. You're a lot more efficient in your movement. Your circulation's better, and you stop sweating after a while. I go roll with the BJJ guys and judo guys sometimes, and I'm not practiced at judo or BJJ, so I do okay. I can survive. I rarely win, but I can always survive, which is the whole purpose of martial arts anyway. But but at the end, even when I lose, the other person's always exhausted, completely exhausted. And they usually say that the comments I've gotten back were like, "Oh my God, you have such good composure. You're always calm. You're not even sweating." And it's that all comes from the breathing. So like, I mean, somebody who's a little bit more superficial will be like, "Oh, well, you're losing the fight," but look at how I walk away from the fight. I don't have any injuries. I'm calm. I didn't sweat. The other guy's exhausted. He's going to go home and sit in a tub of ice and, be putting, rubbing his elbow for the next couple of days. And, our priorities are a little out of whack. We're too focused on the aesthetic, and like the breathing makes everything better. I mean, just walking up a flight of stairs. Can you breathe properly walking up a flight of stairs, or do you get winded by the time you're at the top? You know what I mean?
How do you breathe? Like, we keep coming from breathing. How do you breathe, like, well, or dimension? Because I'm, what was it? Interested by your saying you're breathing first, then the after. What do you mean by that? Can you explain?
Simple concept of leading with the breath, at least, is that the breathing is longer than the motion. So say you just have a simple movement of moving your arms up and back down, right? So you would breathe first. The inhale opens the chest. Then the movement happens. You're still breathing. And then when you exhale, the exhale happens first. Then the hands move. And even when the hands stop, you're still exhaling. So the breath is longer than the motion. And you can put this into any movement. You can put this into the animal movements on the floor. You can put it into anything that's not a weight-bearing movement that, like using weights. Because weights, you always have to exhale. You always have to, because you're putting weight on the body. But, understanding the function of the breath, the chest, when it inhales, opens, right? So you want to use that to open. And then when you exhale, the stomach contracts, so you use that to close. And you're getting that much more projection out of the spine, so you can actually create a lot of power this way. Whether you're throwing a punch or whatever. So it all comes from that breath, being able to expand and contract and control the limbs through the breathing and through the spine, all by just focusing on the breath. And this is wonderful for health. Just being able to, because what happens, like, people go into the gym, they do their workout, then they start breathing, right? But why? Breathe early, oxygenate the system, then you can actually do more work. My teacher, this is really funny. My teacher told me, Edgar Secoles, teacher at Systema, New York City. He told me the one time, he's like, you got to ask yourself the question, how can you, and he was completely joking with me. He's like, how can you do push-ups for an hour straight? He goes, you should go home, you should try to figure out how to do push-ups for an hour straight. And the answer is simple. It's the breath. You got to be able to breathe. You go slow. You don't rush through it, but you letting the spine and the breath do the work. Not letting the muscles do the work. The breath and the spine, and just structuring your body rather than the big muscles. Most people think with the big muscles, they're not thinking with the connective tissue. They're not thinking with the breath and the spine. And I actually tried to do that. I made it 45 minutes. Push-ups for 45 minutes. It was great. It felt awesome afterwards. And I didn't stop because I got tired. I stopped because I got bored. It was just incredibly boring to keep going like that. I'm like, I can make it an hour. This is enough. And then I told my teacher that I did that, and he's like, I was just joking, right? It's just an example, But it's really funny. It's amazing what the body can do with if you just understand how it works.
That's when you say with that, like that, it's very eye opening, right? Like it's like wow. It's like you never thought. I mean, of course, I read books a long time ago when I was a kid. They said when you breathe, it gives you, you know, power, whatever, and whatever. But when you connect the dots like that, breathing is very important, whether for life or just martial arts is very important. That's. I'm glad that you're writing the book. Glad.
Oh, it'll be more of a pamphlet of exercises, mostly.
Okay. Right. Yeah, okay. Thank you for your time today. This is incredible.
Very nice to talk to you. Thanks.
Yeah. Subscribe to my channel, like my video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Thank you.